Thank you so much again, Abigail. It is a pleasure to have you. We are super excited that you agreed to do this. And I think if we could just, start off with just a brief introduction of yourself, your personal, professional life, early career, mid-career. You can kind of cover however much or little as you see fit to give everybody kind of a sense for who you are and where your career has taken you to date.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again for the opportunity. Thrilled to be here. Sure, let's kick off. So in the spirit of this forum, I am an executive MBA from Columbia in New York. And when I went through that program, I was already working at Nestle Health Sciences, which today I have the honor of being the CEO of Nestle Health Sciences US. So working backwards from all that, I built my career at Nestle Health Sciences, mostly through marketing and then into general management. About half my time has been in North America and the rest of it's been abroad in Europe and in Asia, specifically Oceania, before coming back to the US about 6 years ago. So I've got some diverse experience working across the globe and I'm very thankful for that. On the personal side, I'm a mother of 3 based in New Jersey and really excited about the mission and vision that we have at Nestle Health Sciences, which is a healthcare company, a startup arm. We launched in 2011 a broader Nestle, which is more than 150 years old. And we've got a great portfolio of products spanning across the healthcare continuum from, vitamins, minerals, and herbal supplements to active nutrition, medical nutrition, all the way up to pharmaceuticals. So that's a bit about Nestle Health Sciences and a bit about me.
Excellent. Well, so Randip, I'll let you kind of kick it off then. I know we have a number of questions we'd love to get to, and let's, without any further ado, let's get on into it.
Yeah, awesome. I think people are still trickling in. So first of all, again, thanks, Abigail, for joining us today. I guess you kind of already answered my first question. Nestle Health Sciences is slightly different than Nestle Health, the more legacy company, and everyone on this call I'm sure knows a lot about Nestle. How would you say in terms of, not only business model, but overall team culture as between Nestle Health Sciences and Nestle? What would you say are the main differences that you have come to observe and kind of maybe cherish?
Sure. So first, Nestle Health Sciences, as I mentioned, was created in 2011 versus broader Nestle, the largest food and beverage company, is more than 150 years old. But there are a lot of synergies across the businesses. Nestle Health Sciences is a kind of independently wholly owned operating company that reports in, it's a globally managed business into Switzerland. And we're a leader in the science of nutrition. We're committed to redefining the management of health, offering an extensive portfolio, as I mentioned, of science-based consumer health, medical nutrition, pharmaceutical therapies, and vitamins, herbal supplements. The US is the largest market of this global business. And like I mentioned, that's headquartered in Switzerland. We have more than 12,000 employees at Nestle Health Sciences. We operate in more than 50 countries across the world. I in particular, although I've grown my career globally, am only responsible for the US business. To your point about broader Nestle, we do partner. There's certainly opportunities where we leverage the scale and scope of broader Nestle, but for the most part, we do operate independently in the US and globally.
Got it. And in terms of, because you already kind of answered it, but would you say that there is, between the parent company and Nestle Health Sciences, there is some kind of, overlap of cultural values, you say, or did you say a little bit differently?
It's a great question. I mean, I think that we always have consumer obsession as a shared value. I think at Nestle Health Sciences, we probably take that a step further, to apply to patients or R&D or healthcare professionals, because our scope of who we serve is fundamentally different than, I would say, broad-based Nestle or Purina or Nespresso and other brands within the family. But there are certainly some shared values. From a culture standpoint, we really pride ourselves on that kind of healthcare continuum and that journey, not only from a compliance standpoint, but culturally that shows up in our really strong purpose. And I think that attracts people to the Nestle Health Sciences part of the business and really meaningfully impacting people's healthcare journey through the products that we have in our portfolio, which is, again, different, but the consumer obsession, I think, is a pretty solid hallmark of all Nestle employees.
Got it. Now, kind of focusing on your career at Nestle Health Sciences, you had this extremely successful career, I'm sure with multiple pivots in your career right now. So I know during our prep calls, you had mentioned about starting as an associate marketing manager and then within the CPG industry, I'm sure a lot of people here on the call would like to make that shift, right, from marketing to general management role. What would be your broader advice or specific, tactical advice to folks on this call if they're trying to make that shift and if they're like starting in a marketing role right now at a CPG company?
Sure. I mean, for me, it sounds pretty basic, but I said yes to a lot of things. I wanted to be a bit of a Renaissance woman, and I really made sure early in my career to diversify my point of view, my perspective, and therefore my impact on the organization. And actually getting an executive MBA was part of that process. I wanted to broaden my overall end-to-end value system and thinking so that I could kind of elevate what I brought to work. I already knew the industry I wanted to work in, but it just kind of helped find that other gear. I would say that I started in marketing and I thought it was a really wonderful way to kind of round out perspective. I like to think of brand management. You have visibility to everything from a P&L to supply chain to product concept all the way to execution. So I think marketing is actually a great breeding ground for general management. That's my point of view. Now, of course, that is what you make of it. And in some companies of different scales and sizes, perhaps the role of marketing is different. My experience was that I had a lot of authority and autonomy early on in my career. So it's all about what you make of it. And how I grew, as I mentioned, I said yes to a lot of things, including rounding myself out on assignments or just volunteering for things to give me different and broader perspective that also ultimately, I think, made me more marketable when opportunities did arise. But from the transition standpoint, I think it's important to make your ambition be known, hear about what your blind spots are and how to fill them, model it after other folks, or, reach out to get really specific gap filling experiences to kind of understand that you're taking it on. And a lot of it is just how you show up. In my experience, when I evaluate talent or I attract people to the company or I mentor others, I really look at like holistically how you show up to a task, how you think, the way you add value, the way you engage other people. And you don't have to be a leader or the leader to lead. And I think those skills people notice. So there's a lot of different ways to take your marketing background and talent, but I think it provided a really diverse springboard for me. From there, like I mentioned, I work in a really diverse company. So I didn't want to just be in consumer marketing, for example. I wanted to demonstrate ultimately, because once I figured out that I wouldn't necessarily want to go the CMO route, but more of a CEO route, I understood that having the more diverse experience was going to help bring that broader perspective to make me the most eligible candidate. So I rounded myself out with assignments, some lateral, some even taking a step back to take a step forward in medical or getting exposure to different parts of the business. Maybe it meant moving or taking an assignment, a mission abroad to just, I'd say honestly, learn in dog years. I didn't have to totally transform my life, but I was able to connect dots a lot better. And that helped me be more eligible and I think confident in people's ability that I could take on general management assignments or that it was less risky to bet on me.
But that's a great answer. A lot of things there to unpack, right? In terms of learning, experience, saying yes. I heard that a couple of times, saying yes to a lot of projects, right? And I'm sure our, a lot of our attendees here today may have some questions, Marcy, on that topic when we open up of what kind of projects, that usually have come across your way. To take a step back here for a moment. So you did your executive MBA at Columbia, as you mentioned. And how do you think, as you said yes to a lot of things in your Nestle Health Science career. What was in terms of MBA, the classes you took, the professors you had, the work you did at CBS? How do you think, or even the peers you had classes with, how do you think that impacted your learnings and your overall career journey post MBA?
So much so. I attribute phenomenal, academic platforms, but it was really the people in the classes. I think I went at the right time for me. I had enough work experience that I was looking to not necessarily compete academically, but really apply the insights from my colleagues, from my professors to real world life experience. So the MBA was absolutely, the executive MBA was the right fit for me at that time. It also was a bit of a recession, so that helped to stay in my role. But it, created a different type of network than I couldn't have dreamed up. The diverse amount of people, and I mean international students to these multifactorial backgrounds, and everyone brought something different to the table. And I really invested in getting to know those people, which opened doors. It really fueled my desire to be kind of a forever student and not just take the material at face value, but really apply it and apply a multiplier really to my life. So it really helped me accelerate at work. It also taught me a lot of things that I don't think I appreciated at the time, like things that have been incredibly valuable to me in my current life as a parent, a partner, and a CEO, was the ability to prioritize and focus. You know, when you're a full-time student and a full-time ambitious professional, you can't do everything all at once. So it taught me some hard lessons about what I needed to exfoliate in my life that was not serving me, how to take my time and let it be the greatest currency that I had. So how to prioritize, focus, and really add value to what I cared about. And it really helped me develop a lifelong skill, which is how to be very comfortable with quality over quantity. Because I very quickly realized that I couldn't do everything to the extent that I wanted to. So I either had to get better at it or reprioritize or pivot my priorities to show up as the best version of myself. So those are some life lessons that my MBA taught me. But I think the lifelong legacy is not only the foundation academically that it gave me, the time in my life that I went, but the network it has built. To this day, we still have a very high functioning and very active WhatsApp group with my MBA classmates. And that's, you know, more than a decade ago. So I'm really proud of that. And I'm really proud of them. And I think that we help each other in ways that we probably never imagined back when we were, you know, working through a Saturday test.
True. No, that's great, right? So much to learn and kind of lifelong lessons, right, out of the MBA program. Any particular class from CBS that you really, for folks who are from CBS, that you recommend or you remember?
Oh my gosh.
I don't want to put you on the spot.
I mean, they build all of the above. I mean, there's certain professors that certainly stand out to me. What I would say is if you're able to, and I know it's a luxury and not possible for everyone, do the international assignments. I think they're done really well. It also allows you to connect and collaborate with other universities. I did study abroad programs in Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, and in particular, those catered to my interests, but really broadened my perspective in a short period of time. And you forge friendships and bonds and I'd say professional relationships with professors in a totally different way when you're outside of the classroom and in a different environment, which is very applicable to the real world. That ability to kind of be resilient and apply your thinking was super impactful for me. We also, as a MBA class, created kind of non-traditional curriculum trips that were sponsored by the organization or allowed, I guess you would say, through the curriculum. So push the envelope a little bit. If there's something very pertinent, real time, that's top of mind in the industry, bring it forth to them. I'm not going to promise that they'll say yes, but I think those were also some really meaningful trips where I am still getting, the ROI today from something that happened more than a decade ago.
Awesome. Again, for everyone who's on the call, joined us for the first time, we will open up to all kind of questions, Q&A. You can ask Abigail. But I have two quick questions. Back to your current role at Nestle Health Sciences. How would you say, what is the importance of being entrepreneurial minded in a role as a CEO of the US head? How do you think that helps in your day-to-day thinking and execution?
Well, I think it's incredibly important. I mean, I work, again, we're part of a broader parent company that's very mature, but really creating this intersection between food and pharma is still an absolutely entrepreneurial and dynamic space. You have to constantly be keeping an external pulse on the market, which for me is a bit entrepreneurial. So I think it's critically important to be successful in this field. And I would argue any field. As a CEO, you have to be dynamic. You have to be evolving and hopefully ahead of some trends. So for me, it's really important to create a clear, concise vision that inspires people and that is headed towards a space that they want to kind of really rally behind the cause and follow you towards. So I think that's what a lot of great entrepreneurs have. You have to be able to operate though within a matrix organization to be successful. We will never compromise on certain things from an operational standpoint, but the entrepreneurial mindset can be very inspiring and it can bring that purpose that we have that we're all rooted in alive with a little bit of passion in a way that can create a lot of magic for a large company and make it feel small. So that's one of the things that I pride, bringing that entrepreneurial mindset. But I've been working in this company for quite a long time. It makes more than 6,000 employees, I feel a little bit like family. I mean, I know that sounds cliche, but it's all about the way you approach it with authenticity, clear, consistent communication. It brings it to life in a way that makes it feel very approachable, almost as if we're all in this together, building the company brick by brick. And I think that's very much the culture that we create at Nestle Health Science.
That's great, right? Like trying to make it feel like a small company within this huge organization is probably a key lesson there. One last question on Nestle, and maybe a good segue from entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial mindedness. Given AI is on everyone's mind these days, as much as you can share in this public forum, what do you think as an industry, maybe for health science, what are the opportunities you see in AI? Right? Opportunities, challenges, if you can share something for the audience here in terms of AI.
Yeah, I mean, a tip that I would say is I think we all need to educate ourselves on AI. Many trends have come and gone. I don't think this one's going away. It's more about how you master it, how you apply it as an enabler to your business. So that's my first tip. I actually recently, completed a course at MIT on AI strategy and operational implications because I wanted to educate myself so that I could bring that thought leadership, that entrepreneurial mindset, and create that vision I spoke about. In terms of opportunities, I think they're vast. I mean, the obvious ones would be, efficiency improvement, creating a culture of common language to improve both operational tasks, but also innovation. I think there's so much opportunity around minimizing, I'd say, laborious tasks, whether it be physical labor or rote tasks in like a warehouse, down to, thinking about hijacking research and development in more efficient, more effective ways that are consumer obsessed, as I had mentioned. So I think there's cultural implications, productivity implications, and really unlocking the future growth to kind of minimize the burden that we have today of very timely or costly processes that can be accelerated efficiently and effectively. Now, with that, there's also risks. Yeah, specifically about Nestle Health Science. And obviously, we operate in a healthcare space where we would never in any way compromise on things like compliance or HIPAA or personal patient information. So there's certainly some risks and room to grow. And it's not a overly regulated space today. So sometimes being a first mover, you have to watch out and figure out how to do that safely through over communicating and being very clear about your intentions, both internally and externally. But I think it's a very exciting space, and I hope that it's used for good. And I hope that it really aids discovery and improvement in employment and patient and consumer lives and quality of life, for that matter.
That's a great, both the opportunity and the risk, the challenge, right? The upside and the potential, management of the risk for a health science company in this intersection. So.
Yeah, and I think for any company, it's about access, awareness, and education, because it can be misused. But if you bring people along on the journey, I think it can be a really powerful tool to unlock for really any business, and particularly ours.
Awesome. So, Marcy, back to you. I know you have a few questions, but do you want to wait for the?
Yeah, I want to save my questions for the end. And Alicia, I'll answer your question real time here. You can type your questions out in the chat, but since you're the first brave soul to mention that you do have one, why don't you come off of mute and ask your question here, and then we'll get to B Cheng because they have a question next. Thank you.
Hi, Randip. Hi, Marcy. Hi, Abigail.
Hi.
First of all, I am an MBA student who is currently doing her MBA at Rutgers Business School. And as it's summertime, I'm interning with a company who is basically into brand protection for pharmaceuticals and CPG products. And happens to be, I have 5 years of work experience in marketing. I'm a marketing person like you, and it really feels nice that somebody from marketing made it to a global company as a CEO. So that's very, very inspiring, to be honest. So my question would be, since you were doing your executive MBA at Columbia and you had experience in US, and I'm an international who's come all the way from India, and I want to make an embark here in the US market. So what would be the tips that you could give me as a marketing professional? How do I do that?
Sure. Well, it sounds like you've already got an internship, correct? So that's a great start. I would say make the most of it, make every minute count in terms of not only the work that you do to pad your resume to get that experience that'll be applicable to the next thing, but build your network. Even if it doesn't come naturally to you, treat that almost as another job. Find other people, mentors in industry, outside of the industry that can help you navigate that particular kind of cultural or international divide. But there's a lot of global companies out there. So maybe if you have to start one place, it's not a no to another place. It could be actually the starting point to get you ultimately where you want to go. I didn't take a direct path, I took a bit of a winding road, and I also swung at some points, it's not always a ladder. And then that works both ways, but I would say really make the internship count, and from an experience standpoint, build that network. And then in terms of marketing, marketing is a universal skill, independent of where you're from or where you're headed or where you want to be. So just make every experience that you have count. And if I can help along the way, I'd be happy to do that.
That'd be nice. I have actually sent you a request on LinkedIn. I was going through your profile and I happened to notice, were you based in Switzerland as well while you were working for Nestle? I observed that. Okay, great. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, Abigail, you had a number of international assignments, I think, not just the international trips you referred to during your MBA, but also a number of international assignments while at Nestle. Maybe just before we get to the next question in the queue, I don't know if you can talk like a little bit about maybe one particular international assignment that spoke the most to you, and then we'll get to Bi-Cheng's question right after.
Yeah, a little bit of, before I joined officially client side, as they would say, Nestle was my client. And even in that journey to get to Nestle, which was a winding one, as is often the case, I had the opportunity to go from the US to Canada and then back. Then, as you rightfully said, I spent nearly 4 years in Switzerland. During that time, I traveled the world. I was based out of our headquarters in Switzerland, but took many mini assignments from LATAM to Japan to really broaden my perspective across ecosystems within the broader Nestle landscape, which was incredibly impactful because not all countries are the same, as we know, even within Europe. From there, I think my answer to your question, Marcy, would be my most pivotal assignment was when I took my first big, we call it business executive officer or managing director GM assignment in Oceania. I was based in Australia, responsible for Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands. And the reason this was the most impactful international assignment for me is because finally I had gone from living in Europe for so long to a country that was like, oh, it's native English speaking, it's going to be westernized and all these things. But it was actually a very confronting cultural experience for me in the most wonderful way. And it really taught me, don't make assumptions. Not all leadership skills or backgrounds immediately transfer. But in that assignment, I had the diversity of cultural norms that I was adjusting to, a large team that was quite literally at the end of the earth, with a complicated supply chain and a footprint that really forced me to use the network. So the advice I gave you is when I took my own. To a question that was asked earlier, this is where I tapped into broader Nestle to help me with things like supply chain. How do you get a medical nutrition product across a desert in Australia without compromising the integrity of the ingredients? Okay, they had figured that out with other products or chocolate or things like that. So really being quite entrepreneurial and figuring out how to get help and how to apply it. It was a pivotal learning for me. I transformed the team, turned around some of the financials, and had to make some bold decisions at a young age. And I learned a lot in that experience. I also learned how to navigate it, complicated, how to ask for help, and how to use it as a source of strength, which up until that point, I think I had really viewed myself as a subject matter expert, where asking for help or saying I didn't know how to do something was maybe a weakness. That was a real turning point for me. I also figured out the power of using my functional networks from CFO to using HR as a strategic sounding board as opposed to just a people management tool. It really helped broaden my perspective and was an incredibly impactful assignment. I learned a lot.
That's excellent to hear. And I know we talked about it at a very high level in our prep call, but I didn't get to hear all the details then. So that was very interesting. And if we have time later, I'd love to know, not right now, but you said bold decisions. That kind of caught my attention. So if there's, maybe if we have time at the end, I'd love to hear about one of these bold decisions. But let's let Bi-Cheng ask her question next. She's been patiently waiting. And then everybody, please don't be shy. We don't have prizes to offer you, but the prize is that you get to speak to Abigail and gain her wisdom. So don't be shy about raising your hand or asking questions. But otherwise, I've got some other ones. Bi-Cheng, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Marcy. And make sure let's ask that question about the vote decisions. And Abigail, very nice to meet you. My name is Bi Chen. I'm a recent Columbia EMBA graduate, and I was doing it with the two kids. And so I completely can relate to your comment on prioritization. So currently I'm working for Estee Lauder, another consumer product company. And previously I was in the food industry, so I know very well, Nestle, and this admirable company. My question is related to, your path to the CEO role. I wonder early on, did you always have that in mind that you want to be a CEO? Or do you see like when it become like so crystal clear that not only it's it's your aspiration, but it's also an attainable aspiration?
Yeah, great question. I feel in many ways I'm fortunate that early in my career, I found a company that both spoke to my purpose and saw my potential and created enough runway or pathway so that I could even dream of the idea of being CEO. It was not necessarily my original intent. It wasn't on my mood board per se, but I always had an ambition to make an impact. And I was just lucky to be in the right place and work hard. And then over time, as you said, when I started thinking, I said, yeah, that is. And I was very clear about career pathing. And we have a very well-structured organization that allows you to kind of build those stepping stones, fill in your gaps. But I wouldn't say that I woke up as a young girl and thought, that's it. Over time, though, I really connected with what we were doing. And I just knew I wanted to be a part of it. And as I continued to rise in the organization, collect experience and exposure, the path started to present itself, and I was thrilled to have the opportunity to walk through it.
Can I just follow up?
Please do.
I promise I won't take all the time. But is there any moments that you felt defeated and you felt like, oh, maybe Nestle is not going to be a forever home, or, it's the culture, it's so positive that you always have been, all in with the perseverance and obtaining this goal?
Perseverance is a hallmark of mine. So I wouldn't say I never defeated, never to the point that I felt out. And I think I always felt part of a cohort where if I ever started to feel that way, I would almost put a mirror up and say, why and what am I doing about it? As opposed to what's happening to me. I've always been part of, and this is a little bit of that entrepreneurial spirit too, of like, so what am I going to do about it? And once I flipped the kind of script or the scenario, the answer started to come such that that defeatist attitude was very fleeting, because I started to kind of take action against maybe that anxiety. And action was always the greatest antidote for me. There's a phenomenal network and really supporting career progression. So no, I've never felt that it wasn't the right fit for me. I've also been part of a very entrepreneurial part of the business where by design, I've reinvented myself every few years. So not only have I not felt defeated, I just felt like, okay, this is another challenge where I have to kind of persevere or use my resilience. And I find that very motivating as opposed to defeating. But my personality and the trajectory of our company were very in sync, in the sense that we have grown from under $1 billion company to more than 6 billion in a very short period of time, with a quite diverse portfolio, which meant there wasn't a lot of time to be bored, and there wasn't a lot of time to dwell either. There's just, whether it be through mergers or acquisitions or internal growth or culture building initiatives, I never felt one-dimensional enough that any one thing could defeat me. I've always felt there was an opportunity to overcome and something to learn and grow and apply to the next thing. So it's a really multifactorial, diverse business. So my short answer is no. My long answer, I hope, fills in some of the reasons why.
Thank you so much. Very inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I will say, before I get back to a couple more of my questions, I think a couple of people have indicated that they are intrigued and want to hear more about some of these bold decisions that you had to make. It doesn't have to be while you held the CEO role. It can be in any of your number of different roles leading up to the CEO role, but would love to kind of hear about at least one of the kind of the boldest decisions you ever had to make in your career and how it unfolded.
Sure. And maybe before I do that, Alicia, I don't think I fully answered your question on marketing. And so one of the pieces of advice I would give you is marketing is really broad. And this is a bold decision. So I'll come back to you, Marcy, I would say be as diverse as you can. Expose yourself to all the different facets of marketing so that you can really zone in on what you enjoy and like. And my best advice, and it's a bold decision, is do things and then figure out what you don't like first. That's easy earlier in your career. So that would be a little tip for you, because you're in I think you said brand protection now. There's so trademark, there's so many things you can do. The boldest thing you can do is expose yourself to them and then start to knock down the things you don't want to do. And then you can really passionately go aggressively against what you do want to do. So from a bold decision standpoint, I mean, I won't get into too much detail, but I would say early in my career, when perhaps my experience on paper didn't support my ability to do things, whether it relates to people or processes, but having a clear vision and holding the business and the team accountable to executing with it. Bold visions could be divestments. They could be pushing for acquisitions. It could be changing senior leaders. That was, unpopular. And I think what I learned is do the hard things first. And that is not easy to do. So from a bold standpoint, it could be everything from doing the hard things first to asking for help, as I had mentioned, to maybe admitting when something isn't working and then doing something about it, whether it be changing the people, the processes, or perhaps divesting something that people had a lot of passion for, but perhaps the P&L didn't work or you didn't see a path to success, and doing that authentically and clearly and owning the decision. Those would be some examples. Happy to elaborate more, but I think it's also making bold moves is saying yes, as I said, taking assignments that maybe didn't have a clear career directory, but betting on yourself a bit and knowing that at least the learning journey would gain value for you and that you'd apply that to something else. I shifted from a CPG focused consumer goods marketing career to take on medical nutrition. And many people questioned why. But that bold decision early in my career rounded me out, I think, to make me eligible for general management roles, perhaps earlier in the cycle versus other people. But I went from big, sexy brands to managing conditions that very few people knew how to spell. So it was a bold move personally, and it paid off. Not all of them do, but I think you have to really diversify your portfolio of experience to grow your career. And that's a bold move, and it's not easy. And then once you're in the seat to make those bold moves, I think it's rallying people around a cause and deciding and going and being clear about it. You have to be comfortable with ambiguity. You may not have perfection or all the information. I learned that very early on, but you have to back yourself, surround yourself by the right sounding boards, and make the decisions and stick to them and be careful and kind along the way, but don't compromise if it's the right decision.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And there was a lot of examples in there. So, and I think that it's very illustrative of just kind of how many different, we'll use the word again, bold decisions you had to make over the course of your career. I want to actually just
say, Marcy, a bold decision for me was accepting the CEO seat while on maternity leave.
Perfect segue. I wanted to talk about that a little bit. And I love that Bicheng had so many overlaps with you, from the actual program to having, children, the CPG background and the nutrition background as well. You mentioned it earlier yourself. You have three young children, a husband, other obligations. Not only do I want to maybe hear a little bit about how you balance, or maybe you don't, because that's sometimes people's answer as well. How do you balance all of that against the demands of being a CEO? And did you have any hesitation at the time of taking on the CEO role when I believe you had just had your third child? Did I get that timeline right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So if you could talk to both, just overall how you, balance or don't balance at all, or an advice in terms of that, as I'm sure we've got probably some people who are parents on the call and seeking leadership roles. And then also just kind of what it was like in that moment of making that decision to take this big leap into CEO at the time that you were having your third child.
Yeah. Well, it was helpful that I kind of knew the organization. So I wasn't moving to take a job outside of a company that I already knew, but the company had grown so much, even in the short time I was away. We went through a very substantial acquisition era, for example. That said, for me, it really comes to reflection. I'm blessed in the sense, and again, this is a privilege that I have a phenomenally supportive partner, right? I mean, I couldn't do it without him and his support. And I feel like I have the right partnership at work, a really strong team that I know and trust, and that I was willing to build. And I trusted myself enough to have the competency to do that. I really think partnership in general, both at home and in the work setting, is such a critical part of my ability to function. The second piece is I mentioned, and I think my EMBA, or my executive MBA, really helped teach me this, is about prioritization. It's about quality over quantity. Quantity is a figment of my imagination. There's not enough time. I can't be everywhere all at once. I had to get really comfortable with that. I had to be ruthless about prioritization, avoid unnecessary sacrifices that didn't fill my cup, keep the bigger picture in mind so that I could stay present where I needed to be at work, so that it was fulfilling and we were effective and efficient. So prioritization is a tool. It's a success metric for me at work. And then at home, it allowed me to be very clear, if I have a minute, where should I spend it? So it's definitely about partnership in and out of home. It's absolutely about prioritization. And then for me, it's also about perspective. So what allowed me to take the leap is I figured, why not? You know, being a parent has taught me about all these things. And what's the worst that happens is it doesn't work out. At least I tried. And I honestly felt, yeah, there was so many things competing for my priorities and my attention and my well-being at that time, but I genuinely believed in what we were doing. And I believed in myself enough that with the right circumstances that I could give this the right amount of me, that I could really make an impact on something I deeply care about. I'm blessed that I have a career that I feel is really meaningful. I feel like it is time well spent. I also feel like being a parent is my greatest joy. And so to have two things that are competing for my joy is a wonderful challenge to have. And I thought, what a unique opportunity to try both out and see how I can play Jenga to make it work. And it is playing Jenga. And my short answer to your question is, some days it's 1 hour at a time. And there's a lot of sacrifices to be made. But I will tell you, being a really clear, consistent communicator in both of my worlds has been the key, the number one key, besides the partnership prioritization and perspective that it brings. I have to bring, at work as a CEO, you have to be able to zoom in and zoom out all the time when there's a problem, you know, a crisis, a people issue, whatever. You have to bring that perspective, but also be 2 feet above the ground sometimes. As a parent, you have to do exactly the same thing. So I had a lot of practice before becoming a CEO. And I just think that combination of things is what sets me up for success, but I absolutely could not do it without a strong partnership and foundation at home. We don't live near family. You know, I'm not a native to New Jersey. We moved here for work, so I don't have a really well-developed, you know, network of aunties or friends or things like that. So it's hard. I'm not going to lie. And I don't take that for granted at all. And my husband has made tremendous sacrifice so that we could explore this as something that was mutually beneficial for us both.
Oh, well, that's fantastic to hear. And I also love hearing, yes, that's right. I saw someone use the clap emoji. That reference to the skills are transferable between both. That is something I've definitely heard from more than one very successful executive. It may not be the first thing you think of, that, you know, there's skills as a parent that are completely transferable to a CEO and vice versa, but it makes a lot of sense. And,
you got to love what you do too. Otherwise, every day it's going to feel like a sacrifice.
Yeah, it's amazing what you said about having two sources of joy. So really happy to hear that. And now it seems like people are feeling a little more comfortable. So we've got Ritu up next, and then we'll have Anurag ask his question. So Ritu, please go for it. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Marcy. I was curious if you have a morning routine. Like, I find that I wake up and sometimes I'm just consumed with anxiety about what's going to happen. And, you know, to your earlier point, I just have to put one foot in front of the other. But yeah, just would love your advice on that.
It's a great question, Ritu. And I wish I had a very compliant answer. What I have learned with 3 kids under age 6 is that even if I have a plan, it gets hijacked. So you can even try the waking up earlier thing or whatever. So what I've started to do is that I set myself up for success the day before. Because find that quiet moment, whether it be the list, the priorities, the what must begin. I have my to-do list and I have my to-be list. Like, how do I want it to be tomorrow, which is like calm, confident, a good parent, a good partner, whatever it may be. And I constantly have those running lists in my head, but reflecting on it with calm after the day actually sets me up for success. As it relates to the morning, you know, I do get up early, not as early as some other CEOs, as I've heard. So I don't know if you want to take advice from me, but being a very present parent in the morning is absolutely my priority. So in summary, I get ready the night before, whether it be removing decision fatigue, like what am I going to wear to that important meeting? I know it sounds silly, but just remove it. One less thing to worry about. So picking out the outfit, getting the plan ready, having yourself organized the day before, or what I sometimes do is like the Sunday night before the week ahead. I kind of do a lot of, some people meal prep, I CEO prep. And I think that really helps me to be more agile as things come up or curveballs, whether it be my children or at work throughout the week. I kind of have my base set about what are the must-dos and what are the nice to have. So no real set morning routine. I always like one, but I'm not going to lie to you, I'm rarely consistent with it because life tends to get in the way. I also work for a global organization. So my boss is based in Switzerland. I start my days early and I kind of divide my time between sort of global responsibilities and local responsibilities, because I have found it's important for me to not multitask, but to be very present in my individual tasks. And I design my day around that way.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. And we'll let Anurag ask his question as well. And in case any other questions come in, I want to make sure he gets to ask his as well. So Anurag, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you so much. And it's so impressive. You know, you really triggered a lot of thoughts here. It reminds me, first of all, the class we had with Professor Paul and Graham. I don't know.
Yes.
Sounds familiar, right?
Leadership.
And then some of your perspective was so enriching, probably hearing from a first mouth, particularly zoom in, zoom out, and how to see how to tackle the problems, right? One thing it comes in my mind and crossed my mind is, tell me one thing which you think now when you look back from the EMBA time or otherwise, which you think if you had the chance again, you would do it differently. And what was that area or the focus could be?
You know, that's a really good question. I probably would have taken more corporate finance classes, but at the time I didn't know I was going to be a CEO. And those all scared me. But the truth is, I really made the most of my EMBA experience. I leaned in. I really did. Maybe to the point that my work, my current job, I wouldn't say suffered, but I really saw it as a unique opportunity, whether it be building the rapport connections or taking the extra ad hoc volunteer opportunity. I have no regrets. I wish I would have had more time to fully bring the concepts to life and maybe take an additional follow-up class. Like, I diversified my experience so much that I didn't always go through the pipeline of like level 2, level 3, level 4 in whatever version of the class. But I got to be honest, the curriculum that Columbia laid out for me set a really strong foundation, and I catered it to what my needs were at the time. So I don't have a lot of regrets other than I wish I had more time. I wish I would have done even more international things, but time and money were a constraint. So sure. No real regrets, but absolutely developing the friendships with your colleagues, and particularly not just the ones that are like you. That was the most valuable part for me that I'm so thankful for. And I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Great. Appreciate it.
Maybe restructuring. I've done a lot of M&A activity. I'm sure there's more stuff that I should have done, to be honest, but I think I blacked out a little bit on it because it was so hard back then. I think maybe getting more into mergers and acquisitions would have been useful for me, but again, no regrets. I thought the curriculum that I went through was absolutely fit for purpose for me at the time.
Fantastic. So I'm doing EMBA at the moment. So your example, when I saw the session from someone who had done EMBA, was
Yes.
very intriguing, and I thought to join. The second quick question, if I may, I don't want to really hijack too much time, but very quickly, from EMBA reaching out to the alumni, I would like to seek some tips that how easy, how difficult, and what worked for you, what did not work to reach out to the other alumni group and then try to break ice and then get the connections going. Did you try doing that? Did it work? Did it not work?
Yeah, when I was actually in the program, my ambition was to grow at my current company. So I'm in probably a little bit of a different circumstance, but what I have seen as being impactful for people that I've tried to break into Nestle Health Science or Nestle in general is you find that common connection. I have generally found that people like to help their community and they'll take that coffee chat. So my advice is like, don't make it too big of an ask. Don't ask for an hour. Don't ask for even 30 minutes. Meet them where they're at and people will find time for you because they can relate. You already have a common bond. In your case, Columbia is your connective tissue and people like to relive that or I think generally people like to help other people. People like me didn't get to where I am without help from others. So I like to pay it back and pay it forward.
Appreciate
So you
it.
just have to find that connective tissue, but make it very approachable and not work for them. And in my experience, that has a way of like accelerating the connection. The other thing too, is you don't have to go to the top. Find people that have an not entry level position, but a position with the organization, leveraging the network at Columbia or LinkedIn or other things, and find that common ground. But don't always go for the top. Those people probably have less time.
Sure.
Make sure that you round out your experience so that when you do get to the top, your questions are more specific, targeted, and impactful for that person that you're trying to make an impression on.
Perfect. Love it. Thank you so much.
Welcome. It's great to meet you.
Thank you. I love that there's so many CBS folks on the call, although
I
know
know,
under
I
registration,
know.
there are definitely many other schools on here. I didn't ask people to do a roll call, but maybe I'll take a peek after the fact and see where everybody was from. I think, Alicia, you had another question. You raised your hand, and Ritu, I don't know if your hand is still raised from before, but we'll get to you again after Alicia's question, and I can save my one question for the very, very end.
Sure.
Thank you. Yes. So my other question is, what does it take for a person like you in a big leadership position? What is it like different from what others are doing, basically? So in your experience in the corporate, what would you say? What is that one thing which is so different for people who make it to the top?
Look, I believe that a hallmark of success for senior leaders is being a forever learner, a forever student of your craft. So we're talking about the MBA experience. I mean, that's a little bit of a forced or structured environment. You have to continuously be learning and evolving. It's such a dynamic marketplace and leadership is no exception to that. So educate yourself, continue to learn through structured courses, through mentorship, through history. I mean, I learn a lot from books. I model a lot of leadership speeches and behaviors off of, Lincoln, Winston Churchill, Catherine the Great. There's so many leadership lessons that you can take, but just be a forever student of your craft, which means reciprocal leadership. That means you can't just speak one way. You have to have a clear vision, but you also have to be able to take feedback at all levels of the organization. So successful leaders that I've seen are forever students of their craft. They're constantly learning, asking questions, asking why, and they're also really open to taking feedback, soliciting it, or really proactively listening from different broad points of view to form their own opinion so that it can be clear, concise, and really inspiring for an organization to follow. So be a forever student, take feedback, and be super passionate about what you're doing. I think the most successful people are.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. And Ritu, I think you lowered your hand, so I don't think you had a follow-up question. So I will ask, but if anybody else has any, this is your last chance. Otherwise, I've got one or two things I always like to ask at the end. The first question I always like to ask is, what are some of your favorite or go-to resources? Now, what I mean by that, it could be anything, books, podcasts, just anywhere that you kind of get either your inspiration, your information from. And again, keeping in mind that you've got your family at home and the CEO job across the globe kind of taking up your time. Maybe you don't have a ton of time for this, but I think even if you have just one or two kind of go-to favorites that you could share with the group, they would probably love to hear them.
Yeah, well, the way that I shortcut the fact that I don't have a lot of free time is I've developed this sort of unofficial strategic advisory council of kind of peers, industry experts, people that I value. And what I do is I count on them to cut through the clutter for me. Hey, what worked for you? What did you read? What was really impactful? So that it kind of narrows my focus and I'm not kind of reading any duds. I am a voracious reader though, in short form. And again, I'm hungry to continue to learn and grow and develop myself. I think you can never lose that fight. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to lead from the front. So I do expose myself to a lot of different material, from Scientific American to understand what's happening. I draw inspiration from a variety of different sources. It's amazing when you open your mind what you can apply. So I read a lot. I use that strategic advisory council. Honestly, I defer to knowledgeable people in and outside of the industry, as well as the competition is always a great source of inspiration for me. My parents are profound and well-developed innovators in their field. So I always, I still rely on the kind of path that they set for me and the values that they instilled in me. And I use that as a source of strength and inspiration. But the way that I do it is I surround myself by people smarter than me on a daily basis, which is very inspiring. I'm not afraid to ask questions and ask for help. I do read a lot and I stay really current on industry affairs and force time to be external. And I really have to force it, because if you don't, it won't happen. And I, like I said earlier, I kind of learn in dog years. So I'll attend an event and I always try to kind of find the multiplier effect, make the meeting, connect the dots to get the most out of something. And then I use that to fill my cup and find other ways to apply it to my business.
That's great. Excellent advice, both on resources and just your approach for making the most of your time, of your limited precious time, while still kind of growing your knowledge base.
I also force downtime, which I think is just as important.
Very important.
Yeah,
I feel if I don't
more in my life than I do right now.
Yeah, I feel like I can't be my best, most energetic, motivated, enthusiastic self without a good chunk of downtime. My energy does not just appear naturally. I always tell people that. They're like, you're so energetic and this and that. But I said, I need my downtime in order to make that happen. So I 100% wholeheartedly agree with you there. And I guess not really more of a question, just more of like kind of a confirmation here. Somebody had mentioned they already had sent you a request, but just to confirm to everybody on the group, because some people did join kind of partway into the session and may not have heard this. I know, just to confirm, you're kind of open to, if anybody wants to connect with you on LinkedIn or seek any, future connections or advice from you. I think you said earlier that you're certainly willing to make yourself, available as a connection or a resource.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to let Randip close it out. But just really a heartfelt thank you to you. And to our audience who got less shy as the hour went on, which is usually the case of what happens. So, because we love it when it's not just us asking questions. So I really appreciate everybody's questions and kind of how diverse they were. And Abigail, your answers, both in today's session and other stuff that I've read or listened to on you, are always very candid and real, I guess, for lack of a more eloquent term. And I really appreciate that. So thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate the opportunity and happy to help if there's anything I can do. All I ask is that you pay it forward to somebody else.
Absolutely. And Randip, do you want to close us out?
Yeah, again, thanks, Abigail, for your time. I know I reached out to you a few months back. This went really well, and it was so many great insights you shared here. The good part is that this is going to get recorded, obviously, with everyone's consent. We're going to be uploading this to YouTube. So hopefully, with so much insights, people can go back and hear what you have to say on so many different questions. I need to go back and see all the answers myself as well. And again, for everyone joining us, Sociate is an MBA networking platform. Look out for the next event, hopefully happening in early fall for all of you. And, I know even Abigail, you're on Sociate, so people can message you there as well. And overall, if you have any kind of career opportunities or things or events you want to share, just like Abigail said, pay it forward. Sociate is a great platform for you to start, creating your network. So again, thanks everyone for joining, and thanks again, Abigail. And we will again convince you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.